welcome back with another banger. It's the React Files. Let's get straight to it.
You heard the theory that AI is our response to losing religion, as we've taken the Nietzschean downslope of there's nothing. We had a void and had to create our own God.
I have heard that.
And if you think about AI, it's 24 hours a day. It could be anywhere and it's everywhere all the time. But if you think about the 5 properties of what people believe God of any kind is, aside from loving, because it can't, to your point, emote, it ticks off every box of a literal deity.
It's idolatry. I mean, that's where it literally leads. It's nuts. I mean, we're seeing that's already happened where people are becoming in relationships with AI and literally treating it as a god. And there's religions based around it already. And we're just building that trust right now of that, this is great. This is awesome. And it's just building that first relationship with our first interaction with AI.
We talk about the Book of Enoch a lot on this podcast too. It talks specifically about these, was it 7?
Watchers.
The Watchers. These Watchers came to Earth and they were supposed to literally just watch over humanity. But they turned against God. But then it says that they taught them all these things, basically everything that AI can do is what these 7 Watchers were teaching man.
It's the Tower of Babel all over again. One of the Watchers was supposed to be preserving and, living in accordance with the instructions given by God. And instead they were trying to ascend to a place, replacing God, which the parallels to where we are now are pretty crazy.
It's so scary.
Like an animal. But then I've seen men become not people. Literally not people. Yeah. Okay. And there is lycanthropy, and there's these understandings of what the Watchers are capable of doing that most people are just woefully ignorant of. And that's why they're perishing. It's because they lack a basic understanding of history. And one of the predominant understandings of what a Watcher, specific class of celestial beings, is capable of is augmenting itself. They can shapeshift. That is by their nature. They're literally called metaskizmadzotoi in the Greek in the New Testament. And it's because he says it's marvel not, because Hasatan, you could say transforms himself. That's a good word for it. But he shapeshifts himself into an angel of light. And his messengers, his apostles, disciples, they do the same thing. And he's this is because they are capable of becoming anything they want to be in order to deceive on one side of the equation. And that's what they'll do. And so when people start engaging in these necromantic rituals and other stuff, and they start to seek the embodiment of these celestial ones, they can get these things on them and in them, and they can't contain them. And some of these guys who are messing with this stuff, who don't come from the bloodline, are incapable of cohabitating like a parasite, and they feed off of each other and they can't handle it. And so that's why families are recruited from these bloodlines, and children are recruited out, even if they don't know anything about it. Like you said, the vast majority of people who come from these bloodlines, there's a lot of muddying of the waters. There's a lot of purity that's been changed. There's a lot of half-breeds. There's a lot of quarter breeds, right? There's a lot of people that don't know this stuff, and they start to get into lesser magic, and all of a sudden it's the doors of everybody open to them. But that's why. It's because they can host these things better. Whereas those that don't, they get taken over by this stuff, and they can't change back. They can't return, in a sense. People become completely possessed and are incapable of expelling the darkness after that. And who do you turn to? You're going to go to the Catholic guy who's all into the same thing that you're into, most people don't understand what a real deliverance is required for somebody that has gone down this far down, where they are the consuming people. That's a deep, devastating, psychological, spiritual shock, physical, your liver, the health. This is why I'm huge into health, because I've physically had to try to find ways to help people who have done all of these things. The consumption of human blood does horrific things to the human body. And this is a major practice within this. These families do drink blood. That's why we have these vampire class of people. It's not some kind of myth. People consume blood in order to extend their life force.
Shout out to Nathan Reynolds. Go grab his book, Snatched from the Flames. One man's journey to uncover the family secrets buried in the bloodstained past. This man talking about some deep stuff. Definitely gotta look more into this.
The Matrix is a system, Neo. That system.
You won't have to.
Welcome to my series on how to decode Matrix script 101, where we will talk about the why we need to know what gematria is, how to decode this script that is given to us on a daily basis within this system or this earth realm. And we will break down how you can recognize, understand, and read the numbers, letters, light angles, and seals based on the fact that all of existence is frequency and light. So let's get started with the basics, okay? And let's understand why we need to understand all of these crazy numbers and decodes, and understand me personally, because I am simply obsessed with numbers, and there is a very distinct reason why a lot of my decodes are centered around numerical values, and I will explain why. So at the basis, all of existence is frequency and light. When you're talking about existence on a quantum level, we are all light beings. You're talking about photon light at various degrees and angles of light. And you're talking about the density of light, which gives you the color spectrum or the spectrum or the variation of light. And in order for us to perceive light, we have our primitive eyes, which is our two eyes that operate in unison with our brain in order for us to be able to perceive reality. Now, I don't need to get that deep into this, but just to give you an example, in order for you to see colors, your brain actually interprets the colors that it is perceiving. Your eyes are not actually seeing the light spectrum. Your brain is interpreting the density of an object, meaning that whatever the numerical density, however light or dark within the color spectrum of this particular photon light thing or this substance or this matter, your brain is interpreting that number, and then in turn it is sending back a signal to your eyes to interpret the color spectrum, and that is how you see colors. You're not actually witnessing colors with these two lights. These are called the primitive eyes. You have a third eye in the middle of your forehead, and this acts as a pine-shaped kaleidoscope that can perceive various angles of light. The reason why they say that it's shaped like a pine cone is because if you've ever seen a pine cone, it's divided up in different angles. And this is a visual representation of what this particular eye looks like. It doesn't look like these two, which has, you know, this one-dimensional kind of thing where you can only see what's in front of you. It has various angles. So if there's any type of light code or light being that is unperceivable to these primitive eyes, your third eye can perceive these light angles or beings or energies and all their various parts. So that brings me to light angles and talking about degrees of light as sentient energy. If all of existence is frequency and light, that means that all of existence is sentient, just like you. You are frequency and light. You are a photon light being. And we are all based in matter, which when we came into this realm, we fell into matter. There was a construct that was created that pretty much made all matter take the path of least resistance using magnetic resonance, which I explained in another video, and I will plug that video in here for your own reference so you can get a basis of how the light grid is created and how all of light is divided up and how we fell into matter in the first place, so that you can understand exactly why something like this would be necessary within a physical matter-based body, because we needed to be able to see each of the angles or degrees of light once we fell into matter and they became chopped up into various body parts. And you have humans that are encased in matter, you have animals that are encased in matter, you have insects that are encased in matter, you have parasites that are encased in matter. All of these different light angles encased in matter, and each of these light angles, photon light beings that exist within this earth realm have a light code. They have a signature basically of angles and degrees of light, and that includes you. Yes, you yourself have your own seal of light that is a part of who you are, and it's based on your zodiac, it's based on your birth date, it's based on your frequency and your numerical pattern at the time of your birth. Your numbers and your frequency, as I explained in another video about how to break down your birthday, are the signature energy numerically, and that can also be broken down into degrees or angles of light. Okay, so we are all comprised of light, and in order for us to perceive any of the frequency in light, we need our primitive eyes and our third eye. Okay, which brings me into light angles and the effect on the brain and your energy. Okay, so why would you need a square and compass? Basically, you would need a square and compass, and if you know what I'm saying right here, then you know what I'm saying. You would need a square and compass in order for you to draw light angles, sigils, or degrees of light. Okay, and basically, when you are dealing with anything that involves a seal, anything that involves a degree of light, or any form of light angle, anything that is curved lines, and usually these seals are comprised of lines, circles, you have some triangles in there, and you have some arches in there, and various arches, okay? And some of these seals, just like in the seals of Solomon and the greater and lesser keys of Solomon, when you're talking about daemon or jinn, basically you're talking about the chopped up angles or degrees of light that are representations of various arcs of light or degrees or angles. And these degrees or angles can be put together, okay, using a square and compass. You can draw, you can draw your circle, you can draw your lines, you can draw your angles, your circles, your triangles, right, to comprise various frequency and light or light angles and seals that control or affect the brain or your energy, okay? So if you're wondering why would you need to do this and why would you need to have this, it is because all of these various degrees or angles of light and the alphabet and numbers are definitely exactly the same thing. And your third eye is perceiving each of these angles of light, just like a sigil or a seal within the greater and lesser keys of Solomon. For a light angle, let's say Beelzebub or Baal has its own very distinct set of light angles. You are looking at sentient energy when you're looking at numbers and letters, because again, these are all degrees and angles of light. Okay, so your third eye is also perceiving. You may see these with your two primitive eyes, but your third eye is perceiving these angles just like these types of seals. Okay, and these are sentient energies, they are frequencies. So when you're talking about, okay, well, we're looking at numbers and letters, how is that affecting me? Well, a lot of people say that they see angel numbers, correct? And you see these 333s or 444s or 555s on the clock, and you're wondering how do I keep catching these numbers? No, the numbers are catching you. There is an energy that vibrates when these numbers align. And this is basically the sentient energy that these seals represents. And you are sensitive enough within your third eye or awakened enough so that you can sense these numbers, and when they pop up, you look, because these energies are sentient and they are calling out to you. I personally have had this happen to me before, and that is when I realized that, hey, these are actually sentient energies. So
first time I ever heard the theory that numbers are sentient energies. Shout out to Anana14, Jenny from the block. I'm very fascinated with this topic right here. It's like learning how to read the Matrix. You know, the screen with the green letters trickling down. Me personally, I see 1111 a lot, 222. It's crazy to think it's catching the attention of my third eye. Wow.
Okay, so the trial of Sean Combs, P. Diddy, is over. He has been acquitted of racketeering, that's the RICO count, and 2 counts of sex trafficking by coercion or force. But he was convicted of 2 counts of engaging in interstate transportation for the purposes of prostitution. So what does this mean in terms of a sentence? Allow me to explain. I'm Molly. I'm a federal criminal defense lawyer, and if an attorney doesn't practice in federal court, they likely don't know how to break down federal sentencing. Let's get into it. Okay, so the 2 counts of conviction are violations of 18 United States Code, Section 2421, subsection A2. And the first thing you need to understand is that all sentences in federal court are essentially governed by the United States sentencing guidelines. The judge, the parties go through this process where the guidelines are determined, an advisory sentencing range in months is determined, and then the parties can argue for whatever they consider to be a reasonable sentence. The other thing you need to know is that there is no mandatory minimum for violations of 18 United States Code, Section 2421A2. And to determine a sentence for this offense, you have to go to the United States Sentencing Guidelines, Chapter 2, Section 2G 1.1. I believe that the sentencing calculation under 2G 1.1 is pretty low. Basically, Sean Combs, P. Diddy, is going to start at a level 14 under this guideline. And there are circumstances where the court could have added 4 levels if there was force or coercion in the case. But here, because he was acquitted, I think, of the sex trafficking by force or by coercion, there is a recent amendment to the guidelines that says the judge can't consider acquitted conduct. So I don't think he's going to get those 4 levels. I think he's going to be at a level 14. Now, there is a special instruction under this guideline that if there is more than one victim, you go to chapter 3 and you address multiple counts, kind of like the grouping rules. So here we might see a couple of levels added because we know he has 2 counts with 2 different victims described in the indictment. So let's say his total offense level is somewhere between perhaps like a 14 or a 16, depending on the multiple counts grouping rules in chapter 3. The other thing you have to calculate is Sean Combs, P. Diddy's criminal history category. We know he has the conviction that he pled guilty to for the domestic violence against Cassie in California, but at most that's probably just a 1-point or a 2-point offense. I don't think he has any felony convictions, so he's likely in criminal history category 1. So then when you go to the sentencing table and compare his offense level to his criminal history category, when we look at those who are in criminal history category 1 and levels 14, 15, and 16, you can see that we're looking at sentences that range from about a year and a few months, a year and a half, to 2 years, 2.5, depending on those grouping rules. So this is certainly a situation where his attorneys can ask for time served.
I think we all been wondering how much time that man gonna get. Shout outs to Molly, the Atlanta lawyer, breaking it down. Federal defense attorney knows what she's talking about, had the guidelines in the book right there. Innocent till proven guilty, that was the case. Hopefully he learned a big lesson and doesn't make these same mistakes again.
Something like that. Real lasers, one of the key advantages that they provide is that they are invisible. You actually can't see them. You just see this damage suddenly starting to blow something up. So if we take a look now at what the Athena did to a truck. So we're looking at a truck engine, and the Athena within seconds was able to beam right in there, heat the whole thing up, and burn through the engine of this vehicle. So if you can imagine if you were in that vehicle, all of a sudden, this hole would start appearing in your engine, and the whole thing would just disappear. That's what these lasers do. Now, there's some other key advantages that we should mention. Let me give you 3 of them. 1, unlimited ammo. As long as we have power, we have an unlimited magazine. Downrange, of course, having unlimited ammo can be a huge advantage. 2nd, it's silent. You don't give the enemy any advance warning that it's coming. And then the 3rd one I wanted to touch on is that it travels at the speed of light. So not only are we delivering powerful, precise.
How convenient. Kind of like not warning us of hurricanes and tornadoes, maybe? I'm surprised this person said this on the air.
You're talking about all of the chopped up light angles, right? We're talking about the Osiris, which is the operating system of the iris, which is the 3rd eye. This is the operating system that allows you to perceive all light, and it allows you to perceive all light angles. So when you are speaking words, when you are hearing words, when you are seeing words, have you ever heard of the saying, see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil? What you're talking about is your perception through your primitive as well as your 3rd eye. It may seem very innocent looking at these numbers, but there's nothing innocent about them. And it's not to say that they are necessarily negative. It is how they are being used. Okay. And when you are perceiving these particular letters and numbers, what you have to think about in terms of your base numbers, starting at the root, there is only 0 through 9. All larger numbers can be broken down, or you can add them together until you reach one of the base numbers, which are 0 through 9. Okay. And in terms of gematria and these particular sigils or light angles, which we can get really deep and granular, I will go into this a little bit further later on in the series and show you how we can use polymathematics in order for us to understand all of these different angles on a much deeper level as I have interpreted on this page. But when you talk about gematria, you're talking about assigning a numerical value to each of the alphabet. This is how the alphabet was constructed. There are 26 of these letters, and gematria is basically creating ciphers using numerical values. So if you take, for instance, the word all, A-L-L, right? That is 1, 12, 12. Now, if I take the number 12, I can break that down to the number 3. And if I have 2 L's, I have 2 3s. So all is 1 3 3, but it can also be 1 6, which is 16, and 1 plus 6 equals 7. So the word all in total equals the number 7. Okay. And if you are seeking to create an energy or to push certain ciphers, anagrams, logos, or seals onto the mind. Because when you talk about the seals of Solomon, the greater and lesser keys of Solomon, I don't know if you've ever read that book, but when you're talking about controlling the mind using seals and sigils, basically the way that they went about doing that is you draw the seal, okay? You have to encompass it within a circle, which is kind of similar to how parasites and pathogens attach themselves within a circle. It is the same thing with jinn and spirits, which I have another video that I broke this down on the actual connection between parasites, pathogens, small microscopic bugs, and their relationship with jinn, which is basically any of the parasites, bugs, and microscopic insects are an emanation of the physical body of most of the jinn spirits, okay? They attach themselves within the body, within cells, and this is how they wreak havoc, similar to how a jinn attaches itself to the mind of its host and takes over and, does malevolent things or not. It may give them powers. It may give them information. However, this is how you construct a seal, okay? So when you're seeing all of these different numbers, letters, and your reality is steeply coded in this way, meaning popular news media, you're watching movies and there's random numbers placed throughout and you're wondering why are these numbers being shown consistently over and over again, or why when you're watching news media, you have all of these numbers that are placed consistently over and over. These numbers are telling a story and they're communicating a larger message within the higher spaces, okay? And it's basically language that talks or speaks over your head, because those who are in control understand how this works at its core, okay? And this is how you control minds. You're basically using all of these various angles of light, and you're constructing a language, and you're constructing all of these degrees of light in order for you to control the minds, okay? And again, when you are using things like the seals, you basically take over the brain with this particular jinn by using the seal with all of its various angles. And they typically, draw a circle, and, it involves some religious rites, which I could get into, but I would just put that up on the screen, where basically you are putting perfumes and different oils on the third eye, okay, in order for you to call forth that light angle, okay, whatever light angle that is, okay. So in the case of something like Baal or Beelzebub, you're talking about a bedbug, batbug energy, or some kind of vampiric type energy that's blood-sucking. And basically the representation of that light angle would be Beelzebub or Baal. And in order for you to call forth Baal, you would need to place this perfume on the third eye, or this oil that would entice this particular seal, okay? And it would call forth that spirit, or the light angle for that spirit, based on whatever the angles and the numerical value that is created within the seal. This is all mathematics, okay? This is all degrees of light and angles of light, okay? So next we will get into gematria, a little bit more granular, and how you can break all of this down. But I did this in order to explain the basis of why you would need to have this particular setup, and how this can be used to control minds. These numbers can be used to control frequencies, light. It can be used to make you do a certain thing, or place a certain energetic frequency in its composition, okay? Meaning that certain words, when they're put together, names of people, logos, anagrams, which is basically saying that you have one word that you put together and it actually means something else when spoken, but it doesn't matter if I'm witnessing or hearing the actual word or the letter or the name of this anagram. Whatever my intentions are when I set out to say that particular thing, it's going to still conjure the same thing. So you have words that are set up like anagrams, and you're thinking, okay, well, I'm saying one thing, but it's actually meaning something entirely different. Or it could have multiple meanings depending on how you can scramble those words and pull out various anagrams. It's the exact same thing. It doesn't matter how you compose the letters. It is going to have the same effect at the end, because it all boils down to these angles or degrees of light, which can be measured numerically, which brings you back to the number angles, which brings you back to the seals, and how all numbers and letters are basically representations of angles or degrees of light that can be drawn, which affect all of existence, because all of existence is frequency of light. So join me on the next part of this, where I will get a little bit more detailed in terms of how to decode reality. And I hope you enjoy this message. Peace, love, and light.
Peace, love, and light. There's some amazing stuff right here. This lady is brilliant. Shout out to Jenny from the block, Anana 14. Yeah, man. The mind control, addictive programming. The Simpsons episode where Bart's holding up the ad to go to New York for $9. Or all the subtle stuff we've seen and leave the world behind. If you don't know this stuff, it's a good time to learn it, you know? I really hope it helps you. Those who know, you know?
Oh, I'd love to see New York. We could all go with the bus company's special super sitter fare. $9? This one's on me.
To grow or move in space. There were several people that contacted Stu and myself saying, this looks like this creature or this creature. And one of them was called Hydra vulgaris. Have you heard of that? Anybody?
Nope.
I didn't either. So it's one of the 6 model organisms. And it's the 6 model organisms because it's one of the keys that these people in human genomics and transhumanism really love. And the thing with this one is that it's immortal. It doesn't die. It continually recreates its stem cells. Get this. It also can regenerate innumerable times. It can regenerate so well that if they put it in a blender, blend it up, then take all the pieces and put it back in a petri dish, it reassembles itself, but miniaturized.
Oh my God.
Yeah, oh my God is right. So I was reading this, and who is really looking into it is UC Davis in California. And so I brought up their webpage. They work with the NIH of the Hydra 2.0, taking on that human 2.0, title. And in it saying how they thought it was wonderful to use this in the evolvement of humanity. Oh my gosh. So when this UC Davis is looking into it, you have to look up on their website. Please, everybody, look it up. At the bottom of the website describing this Hydra vulgaris, they have, you can click on this. Now, this is a biology department. Click on this, and it is their Hydra playing card. They have 131 playing cards. Now, this is not a study card, a playing card. And at the bottom of the playing card, it says, Hail Hydra. Have you ever heard of Hail Hydra before? Anybody out there? I didn't until I had somebody tell me, that's from one of the Marvel characters. This evil Nazi group, get this, that was able to get an organism to be injected inside of a person that would take over its brain and be connected to an AI program. Was that predictive programming or what? You can't make this stuff up.
Man, we got Hydra IRL before GTA 6. This is crazy.
So welcome back to part 3 on how to decode Matrix Script 101. If you have not watched part 1 and 2, I highly suggest you go back to watch the full series so you can have full context of what we will be discussing here today. It is important for you to understand the basics on how to decode Matrix Script and the why or the reason before we get into this main part, which is talking about the main crux of the story. In order for you to understand why everything is the way that it is, why the Matrix is structured, why there's even a script in the first place, it's very important for you to understand the main characters within the story or the timeline and their main reasons why they exist in such a powerful position. Okay. So understanding the basics of how all existence is frequency and light, and how all numbers, letters, and different angles are variations of different frequencies, and how they shape our reality through popular news media, television, movies, etc., is understanding that within all of this scripting within the Matrix, there is one main story, and it all centers around the two witnesses of Revelations. These are the two most powerful beings on planet Earth because they are the original arcs of Mother and Father, or the Divine Mother, the Divine Father himself, herself, or God himself, herself. Okay. She is the original Venus, Ishtar, goddess, mother, queen of heaven, also depicted as Lucifer, which I will get into in another part or another video explaining and breaking down how they have flipped this particular feminine energy or this feminine deity into the devil, or trying to make her out to be Satan. And Lucifer and Satan are not even the same thing at all. Okay. So in order for you to understand the main scripting, it's important for you to understand the two witnesses and what power they represent, and why they are such a big part of the Matrix scripting in the first place, and how there's this great orchestration to keep a certain timeline from happening, which is this timeline where the moon machine shuts down and overheats. It turns as red and basically turns the sun black because the outer layer comes undone. You have this great solar flash, the stars fall, the sky rolls up, and there's a great earthquake as never seen before. Okay. And the reason for that is that these two individuals are the 13 bloodline of Christ. They are the last living descendants of this genetic code of a race of individuals that precede planet Earth. They were the first ones to incarnate here, and they were integral in the creation of this realm as God the Mother, God the Father himself, herself. And they are the ones who set up the magnetic sphere. They are the ones who spawned all of the energy that exists within this earth realm. They have given birth to nations. They are the two most powerful beings on planet Earth, and they have been themselves humans encapsulated in flesh, incarnating through the moon machine and reincarnating through the moon machine as regular everyday people. However, their soul's energy is very ancient. Okay, these two powerful beings. There is a very distinct reason why the Bible itself opens up with the story of Adam and Eve, and it ends with the story of the two witnesses, which is a man and a woman. Okay. And you have the story of Adam and Eve symbolically representing the start of the realm. And there's a reason why Adam is placed in the garden first and Eve is given as a helpmate. And she is a helper because she is a teacher, because she is divine mother. She is already a primordial supreme being. And in an effort to align the divine masculine with love and to get him to understand fully all of the different mechanisms of love, he had to explore what the opposite of love was, which is sin. Okay. And in order for him to get back to himself, or come Ouroboros, because right now he is just 1 degree of 360th of a circle, okay, which is the phallus. He had to do his whole Ouroboros and come full circle into himself, into his full woman and divine feminine, and bring a close by the birth of this man child in a form of redemption for the divine masculine, after having traversed through Earth School and learning everything as the Adam. Okay. He has now come full circle to himself, and he is depicted as one of the two witnesses who is going to rescue the woman clothed with the sun, and they are going to give birth to the man child who is to rule the nations with a rod of iron, because this boy has never existed within the realm. And basically, he is coming in as a new photon light being. And as I said in other videos, the magnetic resonance that was created by the two polar magnets that are the north and south node of this magnetic sphere are going to come undone, because the magnetic resonance between the two magnets creates this polar vortex in the center. And this polar vortex that spins in the center basically creates magnetic resonance that allowed all matter to stick onto the light code, or the light grid that was created when they first initially mapped out the star system, which are alloy balls that are projected onto by this machine that is housed in the moon. This is a very complex system that was set up by these two individuals in order for them to come in and experience earth realm, and also my goal, which is to keep the sun from dying. And this is also symbolic of the divine masculine, the sun, S-U-N, or the S-O-N, being his full circle moment where he comes back to himself. And not only that, they have the gold, so now they can keep the sun's energy from dying out by placing this gold dust into the air as a reflective, conductive material to shoot the energy back into the sun, where we will no longer have to worry about the sun dying out. We'll be able to have the earth realm for much longer. We won't have to worry about doing this reset process again. And you will have the full redemption of the divine masculine in his supremeness through the birth of this perfect child. Okay. This child has never been through the moon machine, which is the reincarnation machine of earth. We don't remember when we are born who we were and what our past lives are, because our memory is erased every time we come through this machine. So this woman who birthed this man child, or brought this man child, or is bringing this man child into the realm now, she hasn't birthed him physically yet, but she has gone through the ritual of giving her divine masculine counterpart her seraphim egg, which is to birth this child in the quantum realm. And he has already been caught up to the throne of God, which the throne of God is the emerald throne, as depicted in Revelations 4. That is a compass around about with a rainbow, which is a representation of the photon light of the body, basically the chakra system, or the photon light energy of this woman. Okay, so her son is in the quantum realm, already in heaven, in her heart chakra, sitting there listening to everything that is going on earth, everything that's going on between his mom and dad. He knows everything that is going on right now. And the reason why they call him a man child is because he's never reincarnated, so his memory has never been erased. So when he is born, he comes into the realm knowing all. They're calling him a man because he is not technically a baby. He's a conscious child who's going to come in a full circle of the divine masculine redemption. Having set in his mother's heart, he is going to cause all men to have to repent in order for them to survive the solar flash, because he is in his mother's love. Okay, so the reason why the two witnesses story is the center point is because they have this ability. The woman who is clothed with the sun, with the moon at her feet, who gives birth to the man child, is the Holy Grail. The Grail meaning that she is the last living descendant of the Christ bloodline who has the genetic code, or the information within her DNA, as well as the quantum birthing machine, which is a seraphim egg to give birth to a new soul, or an angel. Okay, she has these abilities, and she is not like every other human on earth. She is very deeply encoded, and she has the information for everything on how the earth realm started, how everything was created. She is the Grail of information, and she has all of these light codes within her DNA and can tell you how everything is going to go from start to finish. She is the Holy Grail for this purpose. This is the reason why they call her the vessel, or the Grail, or Mary Magdalene, and the hunt for the Grail, which is basically the alphabet wager for the search for this woman who has all of this genetic information. She is the most important part of the story. She actually is the Christ, okay, because she has all of the information. She's like the Scarlett Johansson. She is Lucy, okay? So she is the one that's going to give birth to this man child. They're extremely angry with her. And then you have the white horse rider, which is her masculine counterpart, who is going to rescue her, okay? And he is going to take her into the wilderness. And the reason why you can tell there's a connection between Revelations 11, where they talk about the length of their ministry, where they were preaching for 3.5 years, or 1,203 score days, which is 1,260 days. Okay. And that is also repeated here in the time frame by which she goes into the wilderness. Okay. And she is brought into the wilderness, and there was a place that was prepared for her by the white horse rider, or her divine masculine counterpart, because they didn't want her to give birth to this child. They didn't want these two to consummate. And they didn't want this timeline to happen, which will overheat the moon machine and shut down the earth realm. So they sought to keep them apart. And of course, they're making it very difficult for them to come together. So in the end, he rescues her, and he takes her to a place that he has prepared for her. And in those 3.5 years, they spend that time teaching everyone what's going to come in terms of this great earthquake, and how you can prepare your body by basically confessing your syntax errors, becoming Mayat, or going where Ma is at, which is the heart chakra, confessing your sins and forgiving the sins of others in order for you to ascend, or for you to reset the frequency of your light body, so that when the solar flash happens, you will be an energetic match and you will have no errors within your light body. This is what the ancient Egyptians were talking about when they were talking about about Mayat. And I will plug in a diagram here that explains that part a little bit more detail, because the Egyptians were actually quantum jumping through the sun portal, which is the melanin within the core of the sun. They were basically jumping through this portal to go to another realm called the field of reeds, which I will plug in here. But you're talking about being an energetic match for the sun. You're talking about these two individuals being the ones that can actually do this because they have the genetic codes. She herself is the Grail. She can birth a new man-child, which his photon light energy never existed within the Earth's sphere. There is a set magnetic resonance that you cannot exceed the threshold of. And by bringing in a new soul or birthing a new child, she herself is causing the disruption of the magnetic resonance and the cause of the moon machine to overheat and shut down, and the sun to shed its outer layer to cause the reset, because he is basically there is no room for him in this earth system. Okay. He's never been born. He's a new angel or a new angle, and he's going to be brought in by these two individuals. This is why everything in your reality is scripted in a way to keep these two people from coming together, because it is vastly important that they create an alternative timeline by using numerical values, gematria, spells, all types of things in order for them to keep these two people apart.
Whoa. Shout out to Jenny from the block. 9 of 14. This is amazing. This is what 607 Unc be talking about. Talking about the moon sending people back down, erasing their memories. Even the Pentagon talking about the Anunnaki coming back. Showing how it's Revelation 11, then with 9/11, like, yo, she's really connecting all the dots right here. To be honest, it's starting to make sense. It's really starting to make sense. And I think the whole basis of her theory is that this is how the media controls the population, you know, with their commercials, their ads, the signs. You know, it's that they live stuff, you know, exactly what it is. They live meets the Matrix. Let's keep going.
When they put the nanobot in you, it becomes a part of your DNA. It becomes a part of your DNA. This is the mark of the beast. This is the mark of the beast. I was in Washington, D.C. teaching the Word of God just a few weeks ago. I was talking with a man that works in the federal government. He was in a real high position with the Obamacare health care plan. And I asked him a question. I said, I've read in the Obamacare health care that by the March of this next year, we will all have to have a national ID card. He said they have changed that. They're not going to give you a national ID card anymore. They're going to give you a nanobot. You may not know what that is. Nanobots are tiny little robots that mankind can control from an outside source. The tests they have been doing on those things is they take a man in prison that's there for life with no chance of parole, and they inject him with these nanobots, a little tiny microscopic robot. And then he said they can take a man that's perfectly normal, and from a computer you can control this man and make him become a raging maniac. Or you can take a man that's a raging maniac and make him a sweet, nice person. He says that they can control you with these nanobots. Eventually this is going to come to the whole world. I don't know when it's coming to Norway. When they put these little things in you, they can control you. They can make you well with these things, or they can make you sick with these things. They can kill you with these things. Sounds kind of scary, doesn't it? But if I hadn't got this from a source in the head of the federal government, I would not have believed it. Now, this man is in a very high position in Washington, D.C. I told him when he told me this, I said, nobody will take this thing. He said, they will knock the doors down to get this thing. I said, why? Why would a man or a woman desire to have this thing injected into them that can control their body? He said, because what they can do, they will promise you a healthy living with no sickness and no disease. You won't have to have health care. They will take care of you. I first told him, I said, I heard that they're going to put an RFID chip in the average American. An RFID chip is about the size of a grain of rice. I heard that's what they were going to put in our right hand or in our right head. He said they've decided against the RFID chip because it can be taken out. I said, so if they put the RFID chip in me, I will cut it out of myself. He said every human being in the United States of America will be forced to take this chip. I told him I will never take this chip. He said they'll put it in you anyway. I said then I will cut it out of myself. He said they thought about that, and that's why they're not going to use the RFID chip anymore. That's why they're not going to use the RFID chip anymore. There will be some people, and there will be Christians that will refuse to take the chip. So they're going to use these little nanobots. I told him, I said, if they put that in me, I will cut that out of me. He said, that's impossible. When they put the nanobot in you, it becomes a part of your DNA. It becomes a part of your DNA. And it cannot be taken out. They put those things in you with an injection needle. So I asked this friend of mine, if you go in and you take this nanobot, what's going to happen to you? He said, Thurman, I believe this is the mark of the beast. This is the mark of the beast.
Are y'all witnessing the aftermath of what just happened in Texas and Mexico? Whole RV parks, whole houses are straight covered up with water. And of course, I'm gonna call out what's strange, because 12 hours prior to this flooding, a NASA astronaut called something weird out, but we'll look in a minute. This right here is just a speed lapse of the water rising, what, 26, 30 foot? I forget exactly, but it's insane. And above you see a place where an RV park used to be, and all of the RVs have been washed away. There's been many casualties from this. And again, it affected Mexico too. This is Mexico. As someone who watches this stuff all the time, I can tell you the storms are certainly getting a lot worse than they usually were. Seriously, whole families in their houses being moved by the water. I mean, that is absolutely insane. Now, the completely irrelevant and not related part whatsoever, 24 hours before this happened, this picture was taken. This astronaut was talking about how crazy this sprite that she took from space was. Y'all are not even gonna believe this. When I saw all this flood stuff, the first thing my mind said was, where was that sprite? Guess where it was? It was in Mexico. I can't explain it right now, but I can tell you it's completely unrelated. What are the odds? And prayers for all the people involved, because this right here is just a crazy natural storm.
That's heartbreaking right there, man. Great flood of 4th of July is what they're calling it. My condolences to the families of the victims that lost their lives in this tragedy. Shout out to Real Moon Henry. Prayers going out to Texas and Mexico, for sure.
And I won't get too detailed in terms of this particular ritual right here, because I always get an account strike whenever I talk about this, but I have tons of detailed diagrams breaking the reason why this event happened and what the underlying message was about these two towers, okay? And what they represent in connection with these two people, okay? There's a reason why it was done on September 11, 2001, and September is actually the 7th month, and as I explained before, the number 7 is the scythe energy or the reaping energy, okay? So you're talking about getting rid of these two, okay, and keeping this 3 energy or the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, masculine trinity versus the Ankh, which is the 4-dimensional space, which is also including a 5th dimensional space, which is the womb space, or we're talking about going in from the 3D which is the 3rd dimension, which is the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, 12 gates of light, moon machine, into the 13th or the 1 + 3 = 4th dimension, which also includes an additional dimension of the 5th space, which is the womb space of the Divine Mother. Okay. So you're talking about a ritual that was done against this energy, which is the woman clothed with the sun. She has the moon at her feet because she can bring forth a man child that's going to shut down the moon machine. Okay. And this is going to cause a great earthquake. These two people are so powerful in their magnetic attraction, and they are polar opposites in the masculine and feminine, that when they come together, just similar to like the movie Hancock, they basically shut everything down. Is going to be a very powerful event that's going to cause a lot of natural phenomena to begin to happen, such as earthquakes are going to be extremely powerful when these two people come together. So there's a great massive orchestration to keep these two people from coming together. And this is basically the basis of every movie. Almost every movie, television show has scripting for these two to keep them from coming together, or it tells the story of the two witnesses in many different variations. And once you learn the basics of how all of these numerical value works, you're talking about the 0, which is representing the womb of the woman, and you have the 1, which represents the phallus, or 1 of 360th of a circle, which is the phallus of the man, and him coming full circle into himself, bringing forth the yang energy, okay, which is the 9 energy. You're talking about the full circle moment of the man. The 1s and 0s are basically binary code that creates all of life and all of existence, okay? And this is their story from 0, which is the mother, Adam, Eve, or the divine mother, the divine father himself, their journey and all of what these numbers mean in between, getting up into the point where they are ending, which the side is like the reaping of time, which I will plug in a diagram so you can see here how that looks in a hexagonal space, and how the mathematics for that works in terms of the 7 reaping, or getting rid of this twisted 8, which is basically the number 8 is kind of like this circle twisted, okay? It's like the womb space tied in a knot, okay? And in order to get that womb space untied, or to get that divine feminine over here to this finality, or this last number, or the birth of this child, because this is a pregnant woman, okay? The circle is at the bottom, and this is the birth of the child, which is like Rafiki holding up Simba, okay? You have the circle at the top, which is the womb being born, and this is the yin and the yang. And this is their story coming together through all of these numbers, okay, procreating and creating life within this earth realm, and then ending time through the reaping here, using this 7 energy in order to slip this knot and then bring birth into this new earth realm, okay? So there's a lot of scripting that goes on to keep this particular timeline right here from happening, because they are the only two people that can do it. They are the first spawns of energy that ever existed, is as far as like the first in the pecking order of the divine order on the earth realm, and everyone else is a spawn of their energy, okay? Everybody wants to be the chosen one, but I'm here to tell you it does not work that way. There is a pecking order, and there are 2 energetic frequencies housed within a physical body of 2 people that are the oldest living beings on planet Earth, energetically and genetically, okay? They are both at this particular full circle moment in time, and they are the ones who gave birth to all of the nations on planet Earth, and they are the most powerful, and they are the only ones who have the genetic code and understanding and information and extreme intelligence to understand how all of this works, and they are the ones who are going to bring this event about through their own works, okay? Don't listen to what church tells you about how this is all going to go down. There has to be 2 people with the morality and the wherewithal and the intelligence level to decode and understand this, and also follow through with what they are doing, as well as get around the orchestration, which is a part of their testimony as a Christ, because they're going to be the ones to witness. That's why they're called witnesses, because they're going to witness to you and give their testimony about how they were kept apart and all the orchestration that was done to keep them from getting to this timeline of birthing the man-child, so that they can shut everything down, so they can free everyone in the realm, okay? This is the most important story of all of the Matrix, and it is the crux of all Matrix scripting. Please like, share, and subscribe, and put a comment down in the comments and just let me know what you think of this content overall. And until next time, peace, love, and light.
Peace, love, and light. I'm loving this info right now. Shout outs to Jenny from the block. Every time she mentions the moon machine, I think about that video we just watched a few videos back, with the moon being a reflection. Pretty much it not being what we've been told it is. Everybody wants to land on it. I definitely feel where she coming from when it comes to that day being a ritual. You gotta agree, society has not been the same. If anything, we're more shackled down and desensitized to what's really going on. More than ever, you could spot an NPC. That movie Hancock is a fool. Her imagery used in that movie was spot on. It's like, I see. I could definitely see like two people genetically, spiritually, who could have been here for eons of time. I could definitely see that for sure. As much as people talk about reptilians, come on now. And the history of the Nephilim, like, very fascinating. I love how she's breaking it all down. She got receipts. Let me know if you liking it. Put it down in the comments down below. Smash that like, subscribe, ring that notification bell. If you like content like this. Let's go.
Say it ain't so. Alligator Alcatraz already flooded, y'all. God must work in mysterious ways, ain't it? Now, they said this joint is going to be able to survive a hurricane, but it couldn't even survive a rainstorm on Tuesday. Now, let's just say the joint got real flooded, and I'm talking about alligators walking up in that joint. What they gonna do then? Like, are the guards gonna abandon them? Like, what? Can you imagine being locked in a gate while the joint flooding, and you see an alligator walking, or you see a anaconda or a python just slithering its way in between the fucking gates? What would you do? I mean, what do you expect? They put this joint together in 8 days. No mercy, no infrastructure, and probably no fucking drainage. At this point, look at it, y'all, the water just seeping in. But I promise you, they probably don't give a fuck. They don't care how these people gonna be living. This joint only one storm away from becoming a floating detention center. The fuck? Y'all let me know what y'all think about this down below in the comments.
A floating detention center. That sounds crazy. Shout out to Zay Reacts. Real talk. That's a real issue right there. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure they got electric cords, wires, things of that nature, you know, that shouldn't be touched by water. That's number one. By the time the anaconda and the crocodiles get there, they'll just be food. Shout out to Zay Reacts. That's wild.
And the worst part is, they're always telling us.
No, Mom, it wasn't the actual devil. No, they were just dressed as the devil, Mom. I have to go. Yeah, you did warn me about Hollywood. Yes, you did, Mom. Yeah, you did. I will. Thank you. She said she'll be praying for all of us. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the devil and all the dark lords.
In this movie, you're fighting the devil. I call him Beelzebub, Lucifer. It's how I got this job. How did you prepare for the role of fighting with the devil?
I did research in satanic kind of cults and stuff like that. In Los Angeles right now, there's like 50,000 devil worshippers. That's not even including the agents.
Yeah.
But let me
Our crowd was too busy cheering satanic worship to hear the joke. That was the sad part.
My upbringing, I grew up in a Christian environment. It took me to my adult years or leaving home where I could really try on something different for myself. That was Satanism. It's working out really well. I made a pact. That's why the movie came out so well.
Thank you to Satan for giving me inspiration on how to play this role.
Have we sold our soul to the devil? How else can you explain us being here?
Sammy told me he worshiped the devil. We were in Dan Tana's on that restaurant with all the pictures up. Sammy was like, Satan is as powerful as God. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? He says, why do you think there's so much anger in the world?
But they're just joking, right?
Once again, they gotta tell you, these NPCs be thinking they be joking. Shout out to Yeno. But Eddie Murphy said about Sammy Davis Jr. is pretty spot on. The Rat Pack, that's a whole rabbit hole in itself.
Soylent Green is a real thing. You're being fed people. That's a whole other subject. It's biblical. It's in the Bible it says that. That's what's going to happen, and it's going on right now. Putin is not joking. Putin knows all kinds of stuff. Do you honestly think that a man with so much power and people underneath him that do, undercover work and know what's going on, and they're in the dregs of deep down in the gutters of watching what's going on in this world and searching out and tapping people's phones and companies and corporations, you think he doesn't know what's going on over here? He knows. When he says Soylent Green is being weird, that's what we're eating, he knows. He's seen it. I guarantee you he's seen it with his own eyes. So I don't eat fast food anymore. I don't eat out. I don't eat out and I don't eat fast food very rarely. I think a couple times in the last several months I've gone to Chipotle, but that even gives me the ick now. I just like, no, the Lord says, my father says, nah, you know what? Here's what this is. He tells me what to eat. He tells me what to eat. He tells me how to clean my vegetables, my fruits, and what meat I can eat. So there's a lot going on, you guys. There's a whole lot going on. And if you feel like you're this...
Welcome to How to Decode Matrix Script 101, Intro to Numerology Science and Simple Gematria. Okay. If you have not watched part 1 through 4, I highly suggest you go back and watch those, as they are integral to understanding how to unpack this subject matter so that you do not get lost in what we will be talking about here today. To understand the basis of the why this is important and to not get lost in what it is that I am about to show you on this board, it's important for you to understand how all of this works in terms of frequency and light angles, and what the main crux of the story is in regards to the two witnesses. So again, if you have not watched part 1 through 4, please go back and review it and come back to this lesson so that you can gain a much deeper understanding. So to get started, on this particular part, we are going to dive a little bit deeper into numerology science and simple gematria. Now, there are other forms of gematria, and it's basically Hebrew or English, which is assigning a different numerical value, which you can look into the Hebrew version as well as the English version, but it's basically assigning a set numerical value per letter, and this creates varied numerical ciphers. However, to keep it simple with this particular explanation, I am simply going to go into the simple gematria, which is the 1 through 26 of the alphabet. Okay. And if you haven't had a chance to see the diagram that I just dropped today, it's talking about the alphabet in its shape and giving you a deeper dive into what those letters look like in an angular fashion using a one-dimensional alphabet, which is all ones, male model, based on 1 degrees. And when you add curves into the letters, curves, as you know, are like cursive writing. So you're talking about bending light, you're talking about bending degrees, which creates a different energetic frequency when you're writing or speaking these letters. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you a basic formula for these numbers, and we're just going to get a little bit deeper into the story of the numerical values, which will shed light even deeper into the two witnesses, what it all means, and the basis of all reality and how it's structured, as well as give you one prime example of gematria so you can understand how these ciphers work. Okay, so I will just start off by saying that I do get a lot of people who come to me and they talk about gematria and they're curious and they don't understand, what it's all about. They go plugging their names into a database and they're seeing all these different things associated with their names. However, I want to just say that for starters, your name is a pattern, just like these numbers and letters have their own vibration and frequency. Your name also has a vibration or frequency, and I believe they call that the name path, and your birthday is your life path, which you can look into ascribing the numerical value to your name path and basically deducing that to one of these numbers, and then it gives you like a read based on your name. However, in the system of gematria, what that actually does is it gives you other words that cipher with your name, meaning that they have the same numerical value or construct. And basically it's telling you different things that could be attributed to your being. So your birthday, your name, and other various things that are a part of your frequency at birth are attributed to these different ciphers that are assigned to you at birth, and they also shape your reality. So a lot of what your name is when spoken and your birthday when used is going to bring certain things into your energetic frequency, meaning that if you plug something in gematria and you see a word or you see a phrase like the eagle has landed as associated with your name, it could be something that is going to be ciphered into your energetic frequency. And this is based on the fact that you were given or assigned this name at birth. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's something directly associated with you. However, it simply means that this is something that ciphers with your name. Okay. Let's look at the numbers 0, through 9. And again, all numbers can be reduced by adding larger numbers together. It doesn't matter. If you have the number 131, you can reduce this by saying 1 plus 3 equals 4 and 4 plus 1 equals 5. So 131 is actually the number 5. This is how you reduce numbers down to one of these base numbers. And these base numbers are the structure of all of reality. So I'm just going to give you a quick lesson on how you can look at numbers in the way of the two witnesses or understanding the basis of reality. And the main crux of this story you're talking about is the 2 and the 5, which are, this is like a snake basically shape. And you're talking about the twins or the two witnesses or the twin snakes. I don't know if you've ever read, there's a book called The Cosmic Serpent by Jeremy Narby. And it talks about his experience going into the jungles and taking ayahuasca and these varied accounts around the world of how all indigenous cultures kind of lead back to this twin snake theory, or when they are in a trance, they tend to see these cosmic snakes. And these cosmic snakes are a representation of the two energetic energies of the opposite polarities, meaning that the 2 is also a variation of the number 11, and the number 11 is representative of the twins. And like I said before, you have the twin towers or the two witnesses, which is in Revelations 11. Okay, and there's a reason why it's in Revelations 11, because the Bible, as I said before, is a grimoire, and there is a distinct reason why it is assigned numerical values and chapters and numbers, because this is all a codex. Okay, it's not for you to find and reference different scriptures, because they could have just wrote this like a book. However, it was patterned with numerical sequences, and you can check me on this. Like, I have tons of examples of how this is done. However, if you don't understand the basis of what numbers are and how they shape reality and what angles are and what frequency is, then you're going to be completely lost in the sauce. So there's a reason why Revelations 11 is talking about the two witnesses, because it's talking about the two twins or the two twin snakes in their story. The 2 and the 5 are prime examples of this particular type of energy. You're talking about the alpha particles, which you're talking about uranium and radium, which, as I explained in another diagram, this is all centered around Ouroboros, and basically some of the chemicals that are used within the atmosphere of Earth. And it's like a decaying type of, or aging type of aging type of elements that basically cause you to regress, that are in the atmosphere, and it causes us to go backwards and eventually die, because we needed that in order for us to pass away eventually, so we can reincarnate through the moon machine and be born again. Like the Bible says, you basically go back in time and you become a child. You have to be born again. Okay, so 2 and 5 is the reference to the twin snakes. And basically, when you see a phrase that says something like the eagle has landed, I know there's a movie in regards to that, but in simple gematria, this phrase equals 131. And let's just kind of dive into those 3 numbers here by giving an example of how these are all workable shapes that have varied meanings when you look at them in a nebulous way. So 1, 3, and 1 is actually the number 5, which is a pentagram. And it's talking about 14 as well, but it's also talking about the number 13, and you're talking about the 2 twins, which are on the outside. 131 is the same backwards and forwards. Okay, so just to give you an example, the number 3 could represent the eagle. This looks like a bird when you turn it sideways. Okay, and the number 1 could represent a plane, or it can represent a pillar when you turn it sideways or you lay it flat. Then you have the number 13, which I said is a representation of the 13th bloodline. And then you have 13 turned sideways, which looks like a eagle landing. Okay. And then if you land the eagle and you put them directly on the plane, you come up with a B. And B again is the second letter, which again is the 11, because 1 plus 1 equals 2, which is the twins or the two witnesses of Revelations 11. And this is a representation or a code for the 13th bloodline. Okay. B is also the same as the number 8 in shape, as I have shown on this diagram that I created called the alphabet, which is the alphabet wager, or the hunt for the Holy Grail, which is the bull of heaven. The bull of heaven is actually Ishtar, Inanna, Venus, or what they call the Mary Magdalene, which Mary is an entirely coded word. if you're looking at it in the sense of the numbers, letters, and shapes that the word Mary, and that's the reason why she is called Mary in the Bible, because M is the 13th letter. So you're talking about the 13th bloodline. Then you have the A, which is the first letter, which is the pentagram. And as I said before, a pentagram is kind of like a protection, or is kind of like a pinning or pinting. You're pinning something against, or you're protecting against something, right? So the pentagram is kind of a anti or a pushing or a pinning type of energy shape. And the letter A is representing the pentagram at 540 degrees. And then you have the R, which is another pentagram shape. And then you have Y, which is the 7 energy, because it's the 25th letter. It's also a representation of Bandersnatch. I don't know if you saw that Netflix special on Netflix, but they use that symbol and it's represented with they have like this demon. I actually had nightmares watching that particular, or playing that particular game. So I would be careful watching or seeing those symbols. And basically, this is the shape of a bander, which is something that you use to castrate a bull. Okay, so the Y is like a 7 or side energy, because it is the 25th letter and it represents 7. So what is being said with the Mary? Okay, and why is it called Mary? It is because this is an anti-energy. It contains a pentagram of the 13th bloodline with a side or a reaper, and you're talking about MAR, 2 pentagrams, Y, which is the 7 or the side energy. So this is kind of an anti-energy towards Ishtar or Inanna. The word Mary is not a good word, okay? In terms of its shape, in terms of its numerology, in terms of the science of its frequency and the angles of light that exist within it, okay? So just to continue with this lesson, the letter B is the same as the number 8, which 8 is a representation of time. The number 8 is also 2 sevens put together, but it's also 2 inverted pyramids. And I have explained this in extreme detail on this page in regards to the 2 inverted pyramids and how they represent quantum superposition of the womb space and the phallus of a male and female, or a representation of sexual intercourse, or it's talking about quantum superposition and binary code, which is ones and zeros, or the building blocks of all creation, or how to bring in life through these 2 particular shapes within the realm, which I will plug in a couple of videos, screenshots of videos that you can go back and watch those particular things. But when you talk about the 8, you're talking about the hexagram, or you're talking about time, and you're talking about the loop or the twisted of the womb, which is the circle that is twisted into a knot. And the 7 energy is basically going to slip that knot, or it's going to get rid of it. And you need the side energy, or these 2 witnesses that represent this energy, to kind of get rid of it. And again, as I said in the last video, the 6 is the yin energy, or the divine feminine. Then you have the 9 energy here, and together they're going to end time. Okay, and this is why this is positioned in this way. It's very specific. Actually, if you take the number 7 and 8, equals the number 15. And again, the number 15 is also 6 plus 9 equals 15. So you're talking about yin and yang math, and 1 plus 5 equals 6, which brings you right back to the 6 energy, which is the divine mother energy.
I know it's a lot. It's one of them videos you gotta watch a few times. Shout out to Jenny from the block, 9014. This is what you call that hidden knowledge. I'm sitting here wondering, like, how did she learn all of this? We see a lot of these lectures and breakdowns from videos like 20 years ago. To see someone in our time this young is amazing. Like, who taught her this? Let's keep going.
Okay, breaking news. Footballer Thomas Partey has just been charged with 5 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault. Here's what we know. So, for those unfamiliar, Thomas signed with Arsenal in 2020 for £45 million, becoming Ghana's most expensive footballer in history. And today, that's all falling apart because these 5 charges are said to involve 3 women and allegedly took place between 2021 and 2022, so while playing for Arsenal. And that's another huge part of this because Arsenal would have been informed that Thomas was under investigation all the way back in 2022. And now that the news has finally come out and it is confirmed that Thomas was the player that was under investigation, let's just say that people aren't very happy that they chose to continue to play him. Now, the 32-year-old is expected to appear in court on the 5th of August.
He is the 0, and 0 is also interchangeable with the number 9 because 3 plus 6 in the 360-degree angle equals 9. And actually, if you use 9 in any of your mathematics, using it polymathically, you will not lose any of the values of, just like if you said 3 plus 6 plus 9 by interchanging this 0, you will still end up with 9 at the end of it once you add it all together, okay? So 1 equals the phallus, and like I said in the other video, 1 is 1 of 360 of a degree of the circle. And in order for the masculine or the divine masculine to get to this point in this entire numerical story of, the 13th bloodline, and you're talking about the Trinity, and then going into the 4, which is the 13th bloodline, to get to the 5th dimension, you're going to have to traverse through Earth School. And this is the male story of him getting from here to here, okay? He needs to be 100% interchangeable. And what that means is through the gravitational black sun event that I have been explaining on this channel with the moon machine shutting down, the mathematics for that is 1 divided by 9 because 0 and 9 are interchangeable. If you divide 1 over 0, it comes back with nothing. So in order for you to get the mathematics for this singularity event, which is the black sun event, and the reset math, you're going to have to divide 1 divided by 9, which equals 0.11111, which is our knock knock Neo moment that opens all of the doors for the feminine to go, for us to go into the divine feminine realm, which is the 5th dimension, okay? And that's going to be brought about by the birth of the sun when we get to this last portion. Again, this 6 is the womb space at the bottom, or the circle, and then it's a pregnant woman. And then the 9 is the birth of this child, or the birth of the realm in the yang energy, or him coming back fully to himself. And it's kind of like Rafiki holding up Simba, the birth of this child or this man being the full completion of the divine masculine and his ascension into his supreme divinity by rescuing the divine feminine and, basically saving the realm, the ego landing. Okay, these two individuals coming together to resurrect the 13th bloodline and bring this divine child into the realm, as I explained before. Okay, so just to give you a little quick breakdown of the mathematics, if you look at the twin snake story and you're talking about these two energies that are polar opposite, masculine and feminine, okay, then you're talking about 12 and 15. And the reason why I put a 1 here, because 1 is the basis of all of, this entire story. You're talking about a 1 and a 1, which is 11. Again, we're looking at numbers very nebulously. Okay, so let's just use this as an example so we can get all of the story here. All right, so half of 12 equals 6. However, 1 plus 5 equals 6. Half of 15 equals 7.5. However, 7 plus 5 equals 12. So you see how the numbers kind of interchange into each other, right? 12 plus 15 equals 27. And 2 times 7 equals 14. Again, we're back here to this equal has landed energy, or the 5 energy that is here. And then you have 1 minus 2 equals 1, and 1 minus 5 equals 4, which brings us to 14 also again. And then you have 2 plus 7 equals 9. And you also have 12, which represents 3, and 15, which represents 6 when you add those numbers together. Okay, so that takes us to 369. And everyone knows about these numbers in terms of their, their symmetry and their connection and how they all equal the exact same thing. It's also a representation of time when you're talking on the clock being, 12, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, back to 12, and the number 12 is actually the number 3. So you have here 3 plus 6 equals 9, and then 9 plus 6 again equals 15, and 3 plus 9 equals 12, which is the same iteration of those numbers, just divided out And again, this is the entire story. Like, all of the numerical values are represented in this particular pattern in some way. And this is just to show you how numbers connect. There are other numbers that you could do like this, and you can kind of play around with them. But this is what you call polymathic thinking, where you are taking these numbers and you're looking at things nebulously, not looking at them in, you know, just as numbers, but you're looking at them as geometrical shapes, sacred geometry, patterns, and you're looking at them as divine symbology of the building blocks of all of reality, which is the matrix. We are living in an actual math problem. Okay, so when this matrix was set up, it was basically set up with the premise of everything being a grid of light. And the grid of light is basically divided up in 196 squares, which is a palindromatic pattern, or this number that is lycro, that cannot go backwards. Okay, it's a set number, and you can't do anything more to it. And within this mathematical equation, you have these divine occurrences of numbers like 49. You have the number 7 integral into it, and 49, as I explained before, is a divine number that represents 4 plus 9 equals 13, which is the 13th bloodline. There's also other, symbolic references for the number 49 as well, but I won't go deeper into that. However, again, this is the twin snakes math, and you're talking about the caduceus, which is a medical thing, but you're talking about the twin snakes energy, or kundalini energy, and Ka. You can say Ca, that's how they spell it, but I say Ka is probably better, because this is a representation of the soul. Ka is Ka, like the Egyptians would say. And you're talking about the deuces, which deuce means two in Spanish. Okay, so you're talking about the twin souls. Okay, when you're talking about the caduceus, and this can go in an even deeper rabbit hole, but I won't go there. But we're always going to lead back to these two energies that I said are represented as the two witnesses. You have the Ankh, which is the fifth dimension, because you're talking about the mother, father, son, daughter energy, versus it being Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, which is just a 3 or a cross. What was sacrificed was the womb space. When you talk about religion, which is the re-legion, okay, which I will get into another video, talking about how a lot of this grimoire within the Bible is connected to the legion, and we are legion. We are many daemon spirits that are a part of the 72 daemons of Goetia, okay? But when you're talking about the fifth dimension, and we're talking about going from 3D to 5D, we're going from 3D, which is the cross dimension, and we're going into 5D, which is the Ankh dimension, and this includes an additional dimension of the womb space. We are leaving these two one-dimensional planes that are crossed, that are all masculine, and we are preparing a new dimension that includes the womb space, which is the Ankh, okay? And as I explained in the video, if you take the flower of life and you create all of these different circles, right? And you just keep taking circles. This is a representation of us all reincarnating in through the moon machine, and we keep looping through time, and we're all crossing paths, and we're having lives together, creating and weaving a story together, which eventually will create the Ankh, or basically this being the key, all right? And these two individuals, with everything that we have all traversed through, with everything everyone has contributed to in their lives and kind of laying the groundwork, we are all one soul family. And in the end, these two individuals will be the ones, or the keys, to unlock the new dimension by bringing in or birthing this man child, which is the 9 energy, this perfect child being that is going to be brought into the realm, which they are so against him being born. Okay, so next we will get into a little bit more of the gematria, but I hope you enjoyed this message. And per usual, like, share, and subscribe, and put a comment down in the comments just to let me know what you think of this content overall. Thank you for watching. Peace, love, and light.
Peace, love, and light. Shout outs to Jenny from the block, a 9 up 14. Yeah, the flower of life diagram right there reminded me of Pi, talking about the Fibonacci sequence and all of that. Still tripping out over that moon machine. Now I see where 607 Unk coming from even more.
They just found 383 bodies in a so-called funeral home, y'all. Somebody tell me how nearly 400 bodies was discovered in one building and nobody noticed for years. They wasn't cremating them, y'all. They was letting the bodies sit, developing a smell. Do you know how strong that smell had to been? And nobody knew? Yeah, alright. This was at a crematorium right near the US and Mexico border, y'all. And get this, y'all, they said some of the bodies that's there was only there for a month. Y'all, and the crazy part is family members were getting handed ashes in an urn thinking it was their family members, and it wasn't the whole time. They was thinking their family members was getting cremated, and the whole time they were doing some weird shit probably. The Mexican authorities say some of these bodies date back from like 3 to 4 years ago. So they said as of right now, they arrested the owner and some of the employees that work there. I don't know, but it feel like something dark going on behind this shit. They said this was in a cartel heavy zone in an area called Juarez, right across from El Paso, Texas, y'all. They said in that area, a lot of trafficking or disappearances take place. So if they found all these bodies in this one place, how many other places are doing the same thing? And how many family members were being lied to, saying they were giving their family ashes when the whole time their bodies was still in the same place? I need y'all thoughts on this as always. This shit crazy, fool.
That's crazy. So the bodies are already there at the crematorium. What ashes were they giving the family? Shout out to Zay Reacts. That makes me think of them videos Piper Miller was talking about with the graves.
Soylent Green seems to be a subject that people either believe or don't believe or think it's ridiculous. I'm going to read you some scripture. Here's the scriptures that mention what's going on. Leviticus 26:29 states that people will eat the flesh of their sons and daughters. Deuteronomy 28:53-57 describes parents eating their children during a siege due to extreme suffering. Jeremiah 19 verse 9 mentions people eating their children and each other's flesh because of a severe siege. Ezekiel 5:10 states that in their midst parents will eat their children and children will eat their parents. That's your punishment. There's punishment being brought upon the world, and one of it is this kind of horrific stuff happening. Okay, here's another thing that's interesting. You all know me. I work in the healthcare field. I used to work in the area where I had to do the aftercare and the calls and all that stuff after somebody was deceased, and decided whether or not did the paperwork and everything to decide whether or not they were okay for organ harvesting. I tell you right now, a lot of these bodies they weren't using for body parts. They're using for something else. Because of what I knew about these people, there was no way their body could, the things that they were wanting to use these things for were capable of being used to put on somebody else for health care reasons. There was other reasons, and I'm not even going to get into it because I don't want to get banned. So I did some research. I'm in Ohio. I did some research. Found out in over 100 years, there's only been one new cemetery built in over 100 years in Ohio. On average, 150,000 people die every day worldwide. 150,000 people die worldwide every day. In the United States alone, 9,000 people die every day. In the United States alone, 9,000 people. Every day, 9,000 people daily. Figured, this doesn't make any sense. Where have all the bodies gone? So I did some more research. Found out there's this new thing called green burial cemeteries. Green? Wow, that sounds like just Soylent Green, right? How is there a connection? Why, so funny that you should ask. Green cemeteries are popping up. What is a green cemetery? It's this special way of burying somebody. It seems to be better for the environment. Oh, I bet it is better for the environment. You guys, check this out. Let me tell you what a green cemetery is. A green cemetery, also known as a natural or conservation burial ground, is a burial site that prioritizes environmentally sustained practices and reduces the impact of traditional burial methods. These cemeteries often forgo traditional embalming, concrete vaults, and non-biodegradable caskets, opting instead for natural biodegradable materials and processes. Oh, what does that mean, though? No embalming, no concrete vaults, biodegradable containers, sustainable landscape, land conservation, natural memorialization. In other words, Soylent Green, you guys. They're telling you right in front of your face. They're taking out all, that's why you don't see any cemeteries popping up. They're putting it in your food. I am not kidding you. Think about it. I did a little bit more research. Some of the places, there's a guy on TikTok. I don't remember his name. Some of you guys, if you remember who he is, tell me who he is. Send me a message, tag him or something and tag this video or something. He works in the burial ground where he was lifting caskets, and he's like, why is this so light? That shouldn't be heavy. It's not heavy enough, blah, blah, blah. It's because they're taking those bodies. I'm telling you, they're taking the bodies and they bury them in the green cemetery where they're preserved in a way where they can go back and get them, and they're putting them in the food. They'll do the burial ceremony for the family, so the family thinks everything's okay, but I'm going to tell you, that body is not there. I know a lot of people get on here and go, oh, that's terrible. You're promoting hate. You're promoting fear mongering, blah, 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 blah. Well, then you explain it. You explain why there's 9,000 people dying every day and there's no new cemeteries. All them people are not getting cremated. There's a lot of religions that don't believe in cremation, number one. Okay? Explain that. There is no explanation. Explain the situation with the food, the sickness, the demonic stuff going on. But, there's so many stupid people on this planet, I can't stand it. I also found out, and this is an absolute fact, you can look it up. I got to look it up. I'm going to do more research on it. They're taking the bones, and they sterilize them. Yes, they do. They sterilize them and turn them into calcium to sprinkle in the food, into different things. They use them as fertilizer food. They're using people's bones. Yeah, they are. I got to find that information. I found the information before and I lost it, but it's true. That's why. Because we're extremely overpopulated. They do not have enough animals on the face of this planet to sustain the amount of food people are eating. The meat and stuff that people want. They found that, I'm going to tell you something about America. Or, heck, this planet to begin with. They're always trying to look for a way to minimize and to handle a situation, to solve a problem. The overpopulation, the fact that they don't have enough, they don't want to take land and precious land and estates and estate land, and turn it into a graveyard or anything, because it's not as profitable as putting, houses on it. They don't want to do that because people are greedy. So they just found a different way. Why can't we just, other cultures eat people and they're living just fine and healthy. Why don't we just use them as food? Make sure they're clean, sterilize the body, make sure the bodies are clean, they don't have infections and all. Yes. Yeah, I've seen some stuff, you guys, in the healthcare field that'll just blow your socks away. I can't tell you everything because I still work in the healthcare field. I don't want to, I don't want to lose my license. I don't want to, I still got to work. I still got to make a living, but I'm telling you, I've seen things that I'm like, yeah, no. Why do you think I talk about the stuff that I talk about on my posts about the demonic stuff and rebuking, and I pray before I go into work, and I always got my eye peeled. And how about all the people going missing? Explain that. And then, I was in the military. I've had people that I worked in the military telling me about entities, aliens, whatever you want to call them, but they're not good. And how they survive is they consume humans. Look, I'm just telling you. That's why I don't eat fast food. I ain't eat it. And I'm going to tell you guys, I have bought food and meat that didn't look like meat, didn't taste like meat. And I had to throw it out. It was something wasn't right. It wasn't spoiled. It's just I knew it. Something wasn't right. I only buy my meat from grass-fed, free-range, home, something that comes from a farm. I ain't playing. Things are getting bad out here, and if there's not a shortage of meat, why are they fake meat? They're making fake meat and trying to get people to eat bugs and stuff. I mean, if you're that dumb to not see it and not know. And I'm going to tell you what, you're just going to get blocked. I can't stand stupid. Stupid is just stupid, naive, and turning a blind eye. I can't stand stupid. It's just that's probably my pet peeve right there, stupid people. Okay? This is what's going on. Do your research. It's out there. The information's out there.
That's the number one thing, folks. You gotta do your research. Shout outs to Green Eyed Angel 70. I totally agree. Nowadays, they'll blatantly put it in your face, like on a commercial or something. Shout outs to Soylent Green as people.
I know a lot of you've probably seen this, but some of you probably haven't. And the reason why is because the news is talking about everything but this. 400 neglected corpses thrown indiscriminately around private crematorium. Now, this was right on the U.S.-Mexico border. They're already talking about it on Twitter. People's talking about that it's a mix of Americans, Africans, and Spanish people. I've told you about this for a long time. But, out of 2 videos, I counted it up. We have 600 people in 2 videos. That's 2 places. Now, when I told you that there's over 160 some places that we've got wind that they're doing stuff like this, think about how many people that adds up to. The numbers are staggering, probably. Now that I've got traction back on this page, I'm going to start reinvestigating. So I'm going to need your tips. I'm going to need you to submit them. All the ones you submitted on my old page, I took notes. And I'd got contact info from some of you, but some I hadn't got to yet. Y'all, this is happening. And this is something that we got to protect. Because all of us will have to use these services one day. I just want you to say a prayer for these people's family. And ask God to give them comfort in this time of unknowingness. These people, again, they gave out fake ashes. We don't know what yet. Probably concrete. Maybe some off of Amazon or wherever people's getting them at. I know Etsy's selling them. I think Amazon took them down. Y'all, we need help. We're in a dark place in this world. I pray y'all have a good day. And sometimes this stuff's hard to talk about. God bless y'all.
Welcome to How to Decode Matrix Script 101, Part 7. So far, we have covered in parts 1 through 6 from the start why this particular scripting is important, how to recognize script, what is script in the first place, what are sigils, numbers, letters, being all frequency and light, being angles and degrees of light, and we covered the square and compass. And then we went through what is gematria and the crux of the story, which are the 2 witnesses or the twin snakes. If you have not watched the previous series, I highly suggest you go back and rewatch everything so that you can have a full understanding of what we will be discussing here today. I have already given what the gematria ciphers are in regards to gematria being either Hebrew, English, or simple gematria, which is assigning numerical values to letters. And everything being about a numerical script, which I have also provided. And I also gave my own personal scripting, which is an alphabet that I created called the alphabet wager. It's not that I created it, I decoded it, okay? And basically, this is giving you a 1-degree alphabet. And this will play directly into what I am teaching here today, which is the pig pen cipher key, okay? So I'm going to show you how to use this cipher, as well as go a little bit deeper into why this is important and what all of this means, okay? Now, the pig pen cipher is something that came to me back in 2021, and this was so long ago, and I saw the pig pen cipher come across my screen some way, took a screenshot, went to Google to kind of research what it was, and I'm like, okay, it's just some kind of secret language, which I've never seen before, and I wasn't entirely sure how to even apply it or use it. However, fast forward to 2024, last year, right before the election. I am a very powerful psychic channeler, and I was channeled up by none other than Mr. Andy Warhol, the artist. And Andy had quite a bunch of cryptic information to show me. And one of the things that he needed me to learn in order to show me all of this secret code was the Hui cipher, Hui. And he had to teach me Pigpen in order for me to understand this. And it was clearly, after deciphering this particular HUI code, a clear indication that this particular Pigpen cipher held so many secrets, okay? And I almost lost my account here on TikTok for exposing the secrets that came to me right before the election. And it was basically him channeling me up to show me that, hey, there's a script, okay? And everything is already pre-planned, okay? And I don't think that people like that too much, okay? They were not happy about that, so I did get a lot of account strikes during that time. And I wound up taking down this particular these particular episodes. They are, however, on my YouTube channel, which is available in the link in my bio. So without further ado, let's get into what is the Pigpen cipher. Now, the Pigpen cipher is basically an alphabet based on coordinates, okay? Now, as you can see from this chart, they are showing you that if you use the coordinates by which the lines that are in the middle, basically these lines right here, if you take these lines as coordinates, right, and you map out what the coordinates look like. Let's say you see something that has a line and a J. Based on that, you can develop a secret phrase, okay? So the example that they have down here is badges for baseball. So it would read something like these different codes at the bottom here based on the coordinates of this cipher at the top. And it's like a secret language. Basically, if you saw this written out, you would not have any idea what is being said. But based on this cipher key, it's saying badges for baseball, right? However, I was told that that is not the end of this particular cipher, and that's not the reason, okay? Now, you could use this cipher for a secret coded language, but I mean, it's publicly available. How secret can it be? The key to it here is to take it a step further, as I was taught. You find the coordinates for the letter, okay, based on the shape of the alphabet, like I displayed in my alphabet cipher or my alphabet decode, okay, with the 1 degree square letters. You would take those 1 degree square letters and you would map out the coordinates to get the letters, okay? And once you have the actual letters that are mapped within the coordinates, you would take those letters and decipher their numbers. So if within the coordinates of H, you have the H right here. Okay. And there are two H's. There's an H here and there's an H at the bottom. Okay. And within this H coordinate, you have BE and HE. Okay. Those are the two H's. Okay. And you would take BE and HE and you would take those numbers to get the, I guess you could say the gematria for those numbers. And that in and of itself will reveal the code. Okay. And if you look at this as this being equal, because the alphabet is grouped by numbers 1 through 26. And like I said, with gematria, you are always adding the numbers together to get one of the base numbers, which is 0 through 9. So on this side, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I is the same as J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, because you're talking about K and B, which is 11 and 2. You're talking about E and N, which 14 is equal to 5, and H and Q, which 8 is equal to also 17. So these letters are the same as these letters. And the same goes for this. However, for the purpose of the secret language that they say it is, you would basically be delineating between words. So if you saw a word in public and you're like, okay, well, let me go ahead and secretly code that word, or there's a name that you want to have a secret code for, then you could use something like this to communicate a different language based on the fact that you have a J and an A and then you have a P. So it would be written out. However, when it comes to what I'm doing here and what I was taught, you are converting the shape of the letter with the coordinates of those letters that are within that cipher. And then you're taking that and you're coming up with the numerical value. So again, this side is the same as this side is the same as this side. That's just how the alphabet is grouped. Okay, and we can get a little bit deeper into that because I do have another codex in regards to these grouped letters and how they all work together to spell out another secret. Okay, but we won't get into that. Now, I got the Pigpen cipher down. And I determined that the letters were B-E, for the B-E, H-E for the H, okay, in terms of the coordinates here. And then I determined that the U was in the B sector, okay, which is here, okay, that is the shape of a U. And then it's also the shape of an H, okay. And then you have here, the D-E-E-F sector. And I got those numbers as well, which are 45 and 46 by taking all of these alphabets, B, E, H, E, B, and then D, E, E, F, To me, those numbers looked like they were getting ready to spell an H, okay? So I took the numbers as they are, 2 and 5, 8 and 5, 2 in the middle, and then 4 and 5, 45 and 56. And I mapped out this entire H by reducing each of the numbers on each side, right? Or kind of dividing the numbers up. Is how I got this cipher to work, okay? And it pretty much formed a full codex, and I did the math on either side, right? So as I did this math, and I'm like, okay, what does this even mean? Of course, the H looks like 2 towers with a line in between, so of course that takes us back to the 2 witnesses, the twin towers, or the candlestick flames. So looking at that, I'm like, okay, well, what is this Hawaii? Well, it just hit me one day. Hawaii is like Hawaii, right? Or Hawaii 5-0, the show, right? So then I looked into the lead character within Hawaii 5-0, and his name is Jack Lord. He died at the age of 77. So I took his birthday and put it into cipher work, okay? Once I did his numerical birthday and broke down the dates, Gregorian calendar versus the ancient calendar, I then came up with the exact same numbers from the Hawaii cipher, okay? So this was confirmation to me that this is the Hawaii cipher, and I called it the Hawaii 5-0 cipher. And the numbers on the side, as you can see here, 774 and 66, match his birth date, 46677. I mean, perfectly, okay? The summation of his birthday is actually at the top, okay? And consequently, this is also my birthday, okay? So I went into this cipher and looked at how I could break down these numbers, and I actually saw that this little bridge or this line in between the 2 towers could be considered like a minus, like you're subtracting something, okay? So this is how I got my numbers, and I did the math for these on both sides. And if you take a look at this cipher, okay, and you just look at the numbers here, okay, there are so many synchronicities here. You have the number 47 and the number 45 touching. You have 9/16, which is the date that the diddler was arrested, okay? You have 112 on here. There's so many. There's 2020 on here. That was the date of the shutdown, etc. There are so many different dates that you can decipher from this cipher. And this takes me to the H, okay? So let's get into that. And let's talk about the H being a representation of 2 towers. And as I explained before, it's the 2 witnesses or the twin towers or the 2 candlesticks or flames as depicted in Revelations 11, meaning that they are twin flame lovers. These are actually 2 people with 1 soul in separate bodies, okay? They are twin flames, and that's what it means to have a twin flame. You're basically the masculine and feminine polarity split into 2, okay? So when you talk about these 2 towers or the H is the 8th letter, okay? And I will just plug in a few diagrams here to talk about the towers a little bit, because we all know about the towers and what happened to the towers. However, the goal was to take out or subtract these 2, okay, out of the equation, because ultimately, as I explained in the previous video, the 2 witnesses are integral into the reset, okay? Shutting down the moon machine, birthing in the 13th bloodline via the 2 witnesses and this woman giving birth to the man-child as depicted in Revelations 12, the woman clothed with the sun with the moon at her feet. We're talking about this particular woman or one of the towers here, okay? And as you can see from these diagrams that I created, the attempt was to take her out of play. So you may ask yourself like, okay, well, these television shows and everything, they match together. And I'm going to show you in another part of the series how to go about stringing along gematria code and how we can use popular television, movies, etc. And we can connect all of these dots very cohesively. This is going to teach you how to read this script very fluently. However, when it comes to these 2 individuals and them being the crux of the story, you have to think about everything in the world and every person that is connected to this particular, I guess you can call it a conspiracy, because it's conspiring against these 2 individuals. But you're talking about these events like the tower event basically being an orchestration to take these 2 people out of play within these groups, okay? Because they are the 2 most powerful beings on earth. And if you were to take these 2 people out of play, then, you know, everything could go along as planned and everything would go the way that certain people want it to go. However, them being the 2 most powerful beings on the planet means they cannot be touched. So when they are in play in any of these secret groups, okay, when they are awakened, and basically she was taken out of play according to this particular chart that I created, or that was the goal basically. And by taking her out of play or her not being awakened, it pretty much gave them free run of the board to kind of play the game however they wanted to play it. But you're talking about, you know, like the Jack Lord within Hawaii 5-0 and his death date and birth date factoring into a bigger cipher, or any actor on the world stage being a part of the pieces within the game. Okay, so whenever these things are happening behind the scenes with these two, you're going to have to read the script according to what is actually happening and what they're saying according to the numerical values and what's going on, because this is a secret language. Okay, so according to what I've been mapping out, it looks like she has awakened, okay, to herself, and all of the communication that has been going on has been, yo, she's awake, like, you know, we're in deep, you know what, okay? And basically he woke her up because, like I said, they are twin flames. They are one soul within two bodies. So by them being one soul within two bodies, that also means they are telepathic. These are two very powerful beings. They're not necessarily human like everyone else. So they have different abilities, okay? And he didn't need to talk to her, touch her, call her, or text her to wake her up. Basically, he taught her in secret, just like Jesus taught Mary Magdalene in the Gospel of Mary, okay? And the disciples were jealous. And he taught her everything about this secret language because he had access, okay? And he is technically, according to this chart, as I said, there was this alphabet wager, which is a money hunt for the grail, which is her, okay? And they were looking for this woman, and they were charting, not just her, they were charting a few, you know what I'm saying? But in terms of her, there can only be one her, because she is a part of his soul, he's a part of her soul, and together they are these two most powerful twin snake energies, right? So the hunt for the grail is about the alphabet wager, or the bets to find her, okay? And it looks like he woke her up, it looks like he found her, and it looks like they're gonna have to cut the check, okay? There's a checkmate, you're gonna have to cut the checkmate, okay?
She's woke. Gonna have to cut the check, mate. Shout out to Jenny from the block, taking the time to break down this gematria and this hidden language of the society we live in, used in the media, movies, all that stuff. I always felt they had a secret language. I want to learn it. How else you gonna know what they doing or what they plan to do? Not only what, but when. So yeah, this information is real important, in my opinion. All these symbolic breakdowns we be doing when we watching these videos, you can decipher and tell whether they're right or wrong.
This is all the news you're not going to see on TV today, but it's going to be simplified in 60 seconds. This woman just unknowingly picked up the ocean's deadliest shell that leads to full paralysis in minutes. Whoa. So basically, this is what the shell looks like, and it literally looks like any other shell, so why wouldn't you pick it up? So this is actually called a cone snail, and even though they look like a normal shell at the beach, they're extremely venomous, and if they sting you, there is no known antidote for it. People are now claiming that this one subtle detail immediately reveals if somebody is rich. Okay. So the biggest thing is to actually pay attention to what people are wearing, because usually rich people will not wear any flashy logos or bold designs or logos all over the place. And then the second thing that people tell you to pay attention to is if you ask somebody how much money they have and they say that they're comfortable, it usually means that they have a lot of money. Archaeologists have now discovered shocking writing inside the Great Pyramid of Giza that tells us who built it. Okay. So it was initially thought that the pyramid was built by 100,000 slaves that spent 20 years working in shifts that last 3 months each. But now that they found these new inscriptions, it's telling the opposite story, that the pyramids were actually built by skilled paid laborers instead of slaves, and the workers actually took 1 day off every 10 days. And then for anybody that may be wondering, these are the new inscriptions that they were able to find. Also, really quickly, this woman just spent the past 4 years praying to a green Buddha statue, only to just find out that it was actually a Shrek ornament. I give you these news roundups every day, so make sure you add me and come back to me tomorrow.
Wow, all these years it was a Shrek ornament. Shout outs to Nick Jackson. I wonder how she found out.
We're not cannibals, so what we do is we take those because we can make some shekels, and we give them to the slaughterhouses, and those are pounds and pounds and pounds of meat that we grind up in the sausage and the hamburger, and that's why we made those the most popular thing, sausage for breakfast and hamburger for lunch. And so all the Goyim out here are really eating their children. And even when we say this outright and tell you people, you don't believe it. So that's your problem. But you, Goyim out there, you never teach yourself. You don't self-teach. You're always looking for somebody else to do it for you. So you wind up being schleppers all your life.
So the letter H is the 8th letter, and it is also a representation, as I said, of two inverted pyramids. A pyramid is actually pi, radius, middle, which is the midpoint of a circle, and you're talking about quantum superposition, which is the inverted pyramid or the womb space, and the radius is the circle or circumference around the bottom of a pyramid, right? And in order for you to get to the radius or the pyramid or the pi radius middle or pi, you would need to have the circle at the bottom of the pyramid and map that out and get to the midpoint of the pyramid and draw that up to the top in order for you to get that particular math. And as I said in another video, the pi radius middle and quantum superposition within two inverted triangles, which has three sides, is actually 3.14. Okay, the math for that is 22 divided by 7, which 22 is actually the number. It's the two twin snakes, but it's also the number 4, and the number 4 is actually 1 plus 3 equals 4, or the 13th bloodline. Again, it's taking you back, and then the 7 at the bottom is actually the side energy, as I explained before. And 22 divided by 7 is 3.14 or pi. 3.14 pi radius middle gives you an unlimited number of possibilities based on an irrational number. Okay, so at quantum superposition is where all life happens. This is the womb space. And then the midpoint of the pyramid at the bottom of the circumference of the pyramid is the phallus energy, or the 1. And you're talking about ones and zeros. Okay, you're talking about ones and zeros, which is binary code, which is the basis and structure for all existence. Okay. And then you're talking about the number 33 also, because each of these pyramids has 3 sides. So there's 3 and 3 here. And 33, we all know what that number means. Okay. And we're talking about butterflies and the butterfly effect and how everything that they do is kind of triggering all of these massive events. Or you're talking about these secret groups. Okay. And basically the butterfly is also meaning that they are 2 wings of the same butterfly, basically. So this line of communication is basically showing them as 2 souls being a butterfly in one, and basically them being able to communicate. They are yin and yang. They are the storm. They are 6 and 9 together, and basically there's no way to separate them because they're 2 and 1. Okay, so if you look at that math of 33, 3 plus 3 equals 6, and 6 plus 9 equals 15, which also equals 6, 7 plus 8 equals 15, which also equals 6. So this is your 666, and 666 is the atomic number for carbon. Carbon is soot or melanin, and it's 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons, basically. So this takes me right back into Set, right? Because you're talking about melanin, you're talking about black magic, you're talking about being encased in matter. So I will just briefly go over the story of the Egyptian pantheon story of Isis, Set, Osiris, and Nephthys, okay, which is Isis's sister, and what this all means in the grand scheme of this entire story. Okay, so you're talking about Set, and Set chops up the body of Osiris, right? And as I explained before in other videos, Osiris is a representation of the operating system of the iris, the OS of the iris, which means the third eye. Okay, so you're talking about the fact that when we came into this realm, these 2 individuals created this realm. They mapped out the star system. They mapped out, the everything with the two magnets, and it caused all matter to take the path of least resistance using magnetic resonance, right? So that means that the melanin was mapped out in terms of the skin suit that was placed on these 2 light beings, right? So they fell into matter, and a part of falling into matter, they had a pine-shaped kaleidoscope third eye, which is implanted or embedded within the brain. Now, with this pine-shaped kaleidoscope, it basically allows you to see various angles of light, as I explained in other videos. So when you're talking about the Osiris, you're talking about your third eye and the fact that it's chopped up into various parts, okay? And when you also are talking about the Osiris and the third eye being chopped up, you're talking about the 72 daemons of Goetia, or jinn spirits, basically. And these particular jinn spirits are the varied angles or chopped up light angles, okay, that are within the prism of the third eye. So the jinn, or the 72 daemons of Goetia, or demons of Goetia, are talking about the chopped up Set chopping up his brother's body, melanin being the chopping of that body, meaning that when we fell into matter, or we fell into melanin and we developed a third eye, that is what chopped up the Osiris, or the operating system of the iris, and it allowed for you to be able to take these varied light angles and create jinn, okay, or at least be able to see those different light angles, because when we all fell into matter, including insects, including animals, everyone has their own light code, okay, and this chopped up our body into various different angles. So when you're talking about the 72 daemons of Goetia, you're talking about these particular light angles. So Set chopping up the Osiris is what that folklore is about. And Isis is a representation of one of the towers, or the divine feminine. She is the is, am, or if you say am backwards, which is I am that I am, I'm ma, okay? She's the mama, okay? She's the divine feminine mother, okay? That is the meaning of the Isis, okay? And her sister help to restore the body of Osiris, or put all the light back together, okay? And I'll tell you how they do that. She herself awakens, okay? And by awakening, that means she received her Christ consciousness. And when you have Christ consciousness within your third eye, that means that you have Christ oil activation. And once you have Christ oil activation, basically you get this golden colostrum or elixir that pours into your third eye, which activates all the light, okay? So there's no chopped up daemons of Goetia within her third eye. That means that she has access to all of those jinn or spirits, basically, who have all these different light angles. They can bestow all these different things. That means that her full spectrum of her light is activated, okay? And that means that she has all of those powers within her third eye in one. That means that she can decipher this information regardless of, she doesn't need to do any religious rites. She doesn't need to perform any of the religious rites within this particular Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon book or any type of grimoire book in order for her to be able to have these powers. That means that she is fully awakened and fully tapped in, okay? Once she awakens to her true self, she is able to do all of this within her own power because she has her third eye fully awakened. And that is what it means by Isis restoring the full body of Osiris's chopped up body, okay? And she is going to birth this man-child. And that in and of itself is going to shut down the moon machine, which also shuts down the grid. Once she births the man-child, it shuts down the light grid, okay? It shuts down the stars fall from heaven as depicted in Revelation 6:12. So all the light mapping that happened with the star system and is reflected by the moon machine, reflecting its light onto these alloy balls. Once the sun resets itself, meaning that the magnetic resonance comes undone, the sun gets ready to reset, and it basically shuts down this entire magnetic system that is set up by the two magnets. Basically, that light grid is going to be gone, okay? So by her awakening to herself and awakening to her full power, she shuts down the moon machine, which in essence restores the light, okay? It restores everybody's light, actually. It removes all of the skin suits and it takes us out of the set energy, which is the chopped up body parts of Osiris or the operating system of the iris, and it restores all light, okay? So this is the importance of the two witnesses. This is how you do a pigpen cipher, and I hope you enjoyed this message. Please like, share, and subscribe, and put a comment down in the comments just to let me know what you think of this content overall. Until next time, peace, love, and light.
Peace, love, and light. I loved it. Shout out to Jenny from the block. Go to her YouTube channel. Check her out. Make sure you subscribe to her channel at 9 of 14. So when she talks about this moon machine and them destroying the magnets, does that go hand in hand with the sun simulation? It goes back to what 607 Uncle was talking about. How they made us fear death. When in fact it seems that that's when we go back to our true form. According to this theory, very fascinating.
Welcome back to How to Decode Matrix Script 101. We are getting ready to get into how to do matrix script decoding, okay? So far, we have covered the subjects as to why you need to understand this and how it all works numerically. What is gematria and what are numbers as far as them being different light angles and all of existence being frequency and light. And we also got into the crux of the story, which is centered around the two witnesses of Revelations 11. And if you have not watched part 1 through 8, I highly suggest you go back to watch the rest of the series so that you will be fully informed as to what we will be breaking down here today, so that you will have full knowledge of what it is that I am saying, because I am not slowing down on this part. This is going to be a deep dive, and I think it's actually perfect that we are right here at Independence Day, which is July 4th, and we're talking about the two witnesses being the crux of the story. And actually, what just happened today was the actor Michael Madsen passed away at the age of 67. So let's get into this code and do some matrix script decoding. What you need to think about when you are doing this type of decoding is what things remind you of other things. And basically you can jump around to different subjects. I am giving you a very light overview of how the flow works and how you can connect dots. And I can assure you that the dots go way deeper than this. I'm talking like the names of people, all the actors, everyone involved in the projects from the producer on down, their birthdays. Every single person involved is a part of the cipher. This is what you call numerology science, or they are calling it a form of numerology magic, okay? Because when you are altering numbers, you are talking about altering the source code, and you're using sorcery to alter source code. So let's get into these numbers and start from the top, where we are talking about Independence Day. The words Independence Day actually in simple gematria equal 128, which is also 11. And of course, the 4th of July is 7-4, so that also equals 11. And of course, you know, right now we have the 47th president of the United States. And I could get into that, and I know that these numbers sync. However, I will just drop a few more of those in this slide so you can just see them very quickly, and you can understand where it is that I'm coming from in regards to tying this all together. So let's go from the top here. You have Michael Madsen, who passed away. His birthday is 9/25/1957. He died at the age of 67. And as I told you before, the number 13 is a reference to the 13th bloodline. Okay. So the September is actually the 7th month of the year. And when I'm doing these ciphers, what I typically do is I subtract 2 months from the month, okay? And I subtract 9 years from the year. And this brings us in years closer to the ancient calendars, or the Ethiopic calendar. I usually use the year 2012 as the end of the Mayan calendar to gauge when this end of the world was supposed to be. And if you subtract 9, it brings you right at 2021, which is a direct flip of 2012. So subtracting 9 typically gives you the absolute perfect numerical cipher in terms of how these numbers are supposed to fall. And it makes perfect sense that they added 9 years onto the calendar, because 9 is the divine number. And if you wanted to spite the creator and make sure that something didn't happen in regards to the birth of the man-child, which is the divine masculine, or the number 9, then you would definitely add 9 more years to the calendar. And as the scripture says, that he would think to change the times and laws. Okay. So if you look at Michael Madsen's birthday, numerically, it breaks down to the numbers 2 for the main number, which is also an iteration of the number 11. And then on the bottom, which is the actual ancient date, it breaks down to 9. So here you have 9/11. And then his bottom numbers, which I also like to factor in because I find that they are totally different most times, but they also tie into the numerical cipher perfectly. His bottom numbers equal 22, which also equals the number 4. So that ties into his age at the time of death. Then you have the fact that he died on July 3rd, 2025, which is the day before Independence Day. And Independence Day film was released, which stars Will Smith, which is why I said here we're going to free Willie from Philly, okay? And we're going to talk about how this all factors and connects into Will Smith. But as I said, this is all a much deeper rabbit hole that you can get even deeper into. I'm just giving you an overview, okay? So Independence Day film was released on July 3rd, 1996, which, as you can see here, that ties into the 9/7, and it also ties into Will Smith's birthday perfectly. The box office numbers are 817.4 million, which equals 74 or 11 again. And then even the location of where they first premiered the movie, okay, is called Mann Plaza Theater, all right? And the address for that equals 113, which equals 5. I don't know if you remember or recall from the previous lecture that I gave in regards to the eagle has landed, but this is the exact same number that I broke down in that particular video. So again, if you have not seen that, go back and watch it. But the numbers for the eagle has landed, which is a code for the 2 witnesses or the 13th bloodline, is 131. So please keep that in mind as we go through the rest of this, and you see that number repeated throughout because it's actually the number 5. And as I explained before, we are headed into the 5th dimension, which is the Ankh dimension. We are leaving the cross dimension, which is it is 4 points, flat points, and it doesn't include the additional womb space of the woman. And the Ankh actually has an extra dimension, which is the 5th dimensional space of the womb. So when you see the number 5, it is a reference to that. And in terms of this particular location, it has MANN in the name, and everything that they do is very specific. And the total for the simple gematria of that particular name, Mann Plaza Theater, is 175, which also equals 4. There are 650 seats within this theater. It's actually closed now, which 6 plus 5 equals 11. And then it was opened on June 30th, 1967, which actually equals 5. Then it premiered in the box office, and it grossed $75 million. So the number 7 and 5 equals 12, which is very succinct with the 12th dimension, or the third dimension, as I mentioned before, or this Trinity, when you're talking about the cross, energy, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, all masculine. Okay. And going into Freeing Willie from Philly, this particular movie, Free Willy, is associated with Michael Madsen, and it has the name Willie in it, so I cross-referenced that with Will Smith and the fact that this is all connected to Independence Day, the film, and he died before Independence Day. So this particular Free Willy film was released on 7/16/1993, which again is the same as his birthday and the same as Will Smith's birthday. You have the 7/7 energy being repeated. So the film itself was 112 minutes, which again, that's the number 13. And it had a $20 million budget, which again is the number 11. Will Smith is actually 56 years old at the moment, which equals 11. Also, the name Willard Carroll Smith II equals 245 in simple gematria, and 245 also equals 11. And he was born on 9/25/1968. His numbers cipher out to 42. And again, 4 is an iteration of 13 and 2 is an iteration of 11. And then you have his bottom numbers that equal 3, just like the $75 million for the Independence Day film release. And you have Gemini Man, which is tied into the 2, which is actually 9 and 9 in his name. And Gemini Man was released on 10/1/2019 as well as 10/11/2019. And I want you to notice a theme here of the 3s. There's a lot of 3s here, and again, that is a reinforcement of this Trinity energy. You have here also the 2 release dates equaling 5 and 6, which also equals 11. That brings you back to the 11. And the box office numbers were 174 million, which can also be iterated as 111. The budget for the film, 138, can also be iterated as 111. And they say that because this was some CGI, doppelganger of Will Smith, and, people didn't particularly care for this alternative person or artificial Will Smith, it bombed at the box office, okay, for $111 million. Go figure, right? Because Will was an iRobot, okay, or he was a robotic form of himself, and that's the reason why the film bombed, okay. And that leads us into iRobot, the film, which is set in Chicago, which is the same place where Michael Madsen was born, okay. The release dates are 7/7 again, 2004, and that equals 11, and also 7/16/2004, which also equals 11, okay. And again, it was released at the Man Village Theater. Remember the Man Plaza Theater for the release of Independence Day film, exact same name. So we're talking about the Man, or the Gemini Man, basically. And this was located at 961 Broxton Avenue. 961 equals 7, and Broxton Avenue in simple gematria equals 176, which also equals 5. There's your 7 and 5, which equals 12, which equals 3. It received an award at the 77th Academy Award for Best Visual Effects, okay? And 7 plus 7 equals 14 equals 5, okay? And this film ran 115 minutes, which equals 7. The budget was 120 million, which equals 3. Box office, again, you have this iteration of 111, okay, with 353.1. And that brings me to the Tesla bot, because when we're talking about robots, we can't leave out Elon Musk. We can't leave out the robots, okay? So the Tesla bot in simple gematria equals 94, which is also the same as Willow. Go figure, okay? Which 94 equals 13. Again, that's back at the 13th bloodline. And the word Optimus actually equals 113, which equals 5 again, which I said again is 131 also. The AI Day event that they announced this particular robot was August 19, 2021. And that actually equals 113 or 5. Again, the cost of this robot is $30K. And Optimus makes you think of Optimus Prime, because 5 is actually a prime number. And the first Prime toy, which was actually a truck, which had all of the different Autobots would ride in this truck, and there was this talisman in his chest, basically, and they called it the Creation Matrix. The name of that Optimus Prime toy truck was FL86, which, if you take F and L, F equals 6, L equals 12, which is also 3, and then you have the number 86, and again, this all equals 32. And this is how you do a flow in decoding. And I can assure you that this goes even deeper than this. And actually, what it makes me think about when you talk about robots and you're talking about will, or you're talking about willpower, okay, or whether it's against the will of man to have these AI bots, or to introduce something into our reality that will take the place of the fifth dimension, okay, or will supersede the fifth dimension and overrule the 11, which are the twin or the two witnesses or the Gemini man, okay, which I can get into that also in regards to who that is referencing, but I won't do that just yet. We'll get into that on another video. However, I hope you enjoyed this message. Please like, share, and subscribe, and put a comment down in the comments just to let me know what you think of this content overall. Thank you for watching. Peace, love, and light.
And that was deep. Shout out to Jenny from the block and 914. Rest in peace to Mike Madsen. Shout out to Will Smith. She definitely got this gematria on lock, for real. Making these connections, doing the research. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. That's crazy. The robots are here. Now we just gotta wait for these UFOs, these aliens. I'm telling you, all this fighting would stop. Everybody looked up in the air and seen one of them ships from Independence Day. Like, we all freaking out. Like, and it's the summertime. Shout out to Jenny from the block. 914. The connections is crazy. Now, this is happening with movies. Imagine everything else that's at stake. You know? It's like information is going over our head in real time. Like, the same for the NPCs.
I think on one side of it, I think we really do have an entire subspecies of creatures that do exist mostly inside the earth, and they are not readily surface dwelling anymore. And I do believe, like in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, man, inside the London Bridge is a massive room, like a throne room, where they engage in this magic. But this Brotherhood of the Serpent, they call upon Nahash, the dragon. And
would that be in normal terms Satan?
Yeah, most people know him as Satan, right? Yeah. But like there is a great red dragon. Like, it's a physical, that's what he looks like in reality. He was cursed, and man, he made him a monster. Yahweh made him a monster. And they would commune with these things. There's 13 grandfathers take 13 of their grandsons, and they bring them into these rooms and do these things on these specific times and rituals for all kinds of stuff. But the dragons tell them the future. This is like always what they've been able to do. Is Satan leads Yeshua up onto a great high place and says, I shows them all the nations of the earth and all their kingdoms and their reigns in a moment of time. He shows them the future. That's what they do. They can show you what's to come. This is why we get hunted by them. He knows if we're going to be part of his adversaries. He knows if we're going to be on his enemy list. And that's why he targets us at our youth. That's what so happens. So many people, they're like, why has my life been a nightmare from the beginning? It's because you have a purpose and a destiny that adversary absolutely categorically does not want to come to pass. It's a real life Terminator scenario. And so he sends his assets in to destroy people, to ruin their life. And those meeting places happen when they sit down in these rooms and they try to call up these creatures. It's from inside the earth. It wasn't like ethereal mist. They were physical things that would come out of these tunnels, and they would come into the room and they would consume the offerings that were given there. And then the words of the Nahash would come forth, and they would prophesy to these guys. Like, they would prophesy out of the mouth of the serpent what each one of their life callings, their shots. He's the shot caller, man. It's like a pimp from prison. He's calling the shots, and you had a bunch of fallen watchers that were in prison in Tartarus for a reason. Yeah, but they got ways of getting messages out, just like the cronies in jail today, you know. And that's what a lot of people are dealing with. They think they're dealing with the top dog, and they're like, I'm finally into the big game. And it's like you're dealing with, you know, a private in the hierarchy, but he can masquerade like a general. And so some people are really dealing with death himself, and some of them are dealing with one of his princes. And this is what my family's covenant was with the dragon. They didn't mess around, man. They went all the way to the chain of command. They uncovered a bunch of my great-grandfather's grandfather was an archaeologist who dug into the Indian mounds out in the Ohio River Valley. And they started finding a priest class that was these serpent worshipers. And that's what they started calling upon. And they started trying to wake up and rise up Huachiblos, which is these deities, these dragon fire deities.
And that's a wrap. Hope you enjoyed the rabbit hole. If you enjoyed this video, why don't you check this one right here. Shout outs to all the reactors. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again. Till next time.